Tonight I'm going to discuss another one of these deluxe era Blu-ray editions. This one is Crimes of Passion, a film by Ken Russell from 1984, starring Kathleen Turner and Anthony Perkins. I did a take of this and I said Anthony Hopkins. I had to start over. I don't want to imagine Anthony Hopkins in the role of Reverend Peter Shane, but if it amuses you to do so, please do. This is one of those sweet little slip covers that most people pull off and discard. I have held on to it because this one kept running out of stock at Arrow, and most of the ones with slipcases were gone. So I was like, I'm going to nab one that lost a slipcase. I didn't really care if it came with a slipcase or not, but it happened to do so that was nice. This is emblazoned with the key colors of hot pink and various shades of blue. The cinematography throughout the film is shot through with those colors. There's some dazzling images in this film. I had not seen it in some time. I had never seen it on Blu-ray, and this Blu-ray came out, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years ago, maybe longer, and I was like, I really want to get this, and I almost got it a few times. It was always $30. But anyway, I got it for much, much, much cheaper at the sale. So sometimes patience and biding your time are worthwhile pursuits. Let me read the back of this as usual. So Arrow's take on this, and I'll give you mine. In the early 80s, British enfant terrible Ken Russell traveled to America and placed his unorthodox imprint on a pair of U.S. movies. The first was The Altered States. So out there, its screenwriter disowned it. The second was the equally crazy Crimes of Passion, starring Kathleen Turner, body heat, serial mom at the height of her powers. Fashion designer Joanna Crane Turner leads a double life. By night, she is China Blue, a prostitute who's attracted the unwanted attention of two men. One is a sexually frustrated private detective hired by her employees, actually hired by her employers at her day job, fashion designer. The other is a psychopathic priest played by Norman Bates himself, that's what it says here, Anthony Perkins, in possession of a murderous sex toy with its outre screenplay by Barry Sandler and over-the-top score by Rick Wakeman. Crimes of Passion may just be the most outrageous Ken Russell film ever made, and that is quite some feat. Yes, with things like the devils and horror in his oeuvre, that is quite some feat. Special edition, brand new 2K restoration, high definition, new optional subtitles for deaf and hard of hearing. I always use those. Audio commentary with Ken Russell and Barry Sandler, and I have not listened to that yet. Other than that, I've explored this disc pretty thoroughly. 7 extended scenes with optional commentary by Sandler. I explored that. Brand new interview with Sandler recorded especially for this release. That was superb. I didn't know a lot about Sandler. I didn't know he had written Duchess and the Dirtwater Fox or Kansas City Bombers or that he was gay or that mattered. But man, it's just fascinating stuff. Great interview. Brand new interview with composer Rick Wakeman recorded especially for this release. Now that was really intense. Wakeman he's a character. He's played with everybody musically. I don't know about his personal life, and he was good friends with Ken Russell. And their first film together was Lysomania, and he breaks down every detail about how it came to be, what he was brought on board to do, to how he was instructed to work with the, obviously public domain work of Franz Liszt and Richard Wagner, whose music were featured prominently in the film, how Ken Russell had to rework the script because the producer cut the budget and took the money and gave it to some other film. And Ken Russell told the guy off in public and then rewrote the script. Wakeman helped him restructure, and he came with a lot of music. Of course, he said, I have a lot of musicians at my disposal. All kinds of orchestras and play. And I'm like, well, of course, man. I mean, you were in Yes. Your albums in Yes were some bestsellers. Your historical noodling, that's not being mean, noodling prog albums, like concept albums like The Journey to the Center of the Earth and Eight Wives of Henry VIII were big sellers. You were an incredible session man. You played with everybody from David Bowie to Black Sabbath on some of their early and very, very key albums. And Rick Wakeman, he was the man. I prefer him to Keith Emerson of that era of prog key playing. And there are some keyboarders from that era of prog that I actually like better than either of them. But that is a whole other can of worms. But Wakeman is certainly high up there in my faves. So with Whistlomania, he became a composer of film soundtracks and scores. So, and he thanks Russell for that, and goes through the whole Crimes of Passion thing and how they decided to use a lot of heavy metal, hard driving music because he thought it was appropriate to a lot of the rough sex scenes. He's pretty frank about it. He's British. He blushes a few times and then tries to get away from saying vulgar words, but then he uses double, triple entendres, and he's not quite as enlightened in the movie as our two lovers in the film are about sex. He's only got a little bit of that British prudery, but he's still got that kind of rock and roll partying salaciousness right there under the surface. Yeah, I enjoyed it. That was great. There was the theatrical trailer, of course, and there's a music video, It's a Lovely Life, put together by Ken Russell for MTV to help promote Crimes of Passion. And, of course, the music was all written by Rick Wakeman. The synthesizers were performed by Rick Wakeman. And I have to say about It's a Lovely Life, just to get this out of the way. In the interview with Rick Wakeman, he says, brought in Maggie Bell, and she just had a great performance, and Rick Wakeman's accent actually is nothing like that. It's actually more unpolished, not Cockney, but very working class, which I don't know if he's a Brummie or not from Birmingham, but I know he came up with, some of the boys and Sabbath and that scene, but he's like, yeah, and Maggie came on and did it, and I realized that it was really in too high a key and for her voice, And nowadays with the technology, we could just tune it down, you just bring it down, press a few buttons. Back then our only option was just re-record the whole vote. And we didn't have that option for time and money. Maggie did a great job, but I'm just saying. Now, Maggie did do a great job. It is a chaotic fucking song. It is a well-written song, fun pop song. The lyrics are very satirical, but it's like the arrangement is rough. I mean, there's passages where you have a bridge and swell of instruments, and it could have been a really big hit song if it had some of these structural reconnoiterings. That's in the music. Now, Wakeman's responsible for that. But as far as the vocals, she's got this kind of over-the-top singing voice, and it works, with the kind of cynical lyrics where she's kind of making fun of suburban, idyllic utopian lifestyle, which, perfectly works with the film. And but she starts going off the rails, and at first it's almost like she's going off the rails like Georgia Brown. I don't know if you're familiar with her, or like Ian Gillan. Just these heights of absolute hysterical notes, and it's beyond Ian Gillan or Georgia Brown. Or it's beyond Diamanda Galas within the context. It's just like her voice starts to crack, and it's super off key. And I think Rick's afraid to say that she sang off key. He blames it on the song. So that's nice of him. So anyway, it's a fun song. You're getting into it, and then all of a sudden you're like, what the fuck is happening here? This woman is losing her mind. And usually I love it when singers get really out of control and scream and lose their mind. I mean, I love Ian Gillan. I love Rob Halford. I love James Brown. I love Georgia Brown. I love Lucy Billa. I mean, these people are a trip, but this wasn't necessarily a good trip. But anyway, so let's talk about the movie. Let's look at this a little bit. So there's a booklet promoting. It's not a booklet. It's a card promoting Arrow. And one movie they promote here, Suture. Suture was one I read about in Film Comment in the mid-'90s. I was really wanting to see it. It was for rent at Cockbuster. I never got around to renting it. Years later, I saw it on streaming, and there's nothing to it. It did give me an inspiration for a character I created named Suture, who is a black telepath who wears kind of a sewn up mask in Flicker Street. Copyright, do not steal him. Anyway, let's see if there's a booklet. I actually haven't looked. There's a booklet, and there you go. Peter Shane, one of the memorable heirs to Norman Bates in Perkins' very psychologically frustrated filmography. So here's all the credits. I know you can't read them. John Laughlin, Annie Potts, Bruce Davison also co-starred. The director of photography was Dick Bush. Within the context of this film, that's a little... Anyway. So here's John Laughlin as our man Grady, Bobby Grady, kind of our main character, our audience surrogate. And of course, here is the great Kathleen Turner as China Blue. In some markets, this film played under the title China Blue. There's an article by Paul Sutton. I haven't seen his writing in a while. Here's a funny picture of Kathleen Turner with the ever infamous silver razor sharp dildo, which Perkins refers to as Superman in one scene. Another essay. Some correspondence here with Kathleen from Ken Russell. The following letter was written by Ken Russell to Kathleen Turner in 2011 with the hope of the pair collaborating again on an adaptation of Alice in Wonderland. Reprinted with the kind permission of Lacey Tribby Russell, his daughter, wife, widow, I don't know. Restoration information, special thanks. Yeah, classy. I love it. So this is one of those dinosaurs that has a Blu-ray and a DVD. Relic of the 20th century. So anyway, when I say things like this, it's up to you to decide if I'm joking or not. So as the True Crime Channel say, let's get into it, crew. Well, we're already pretty into it, but let me tell you the story. So, I think this movie, and the themes and ideas and etc. I think this movie kind of it hit me in a lot of ways. It didn't make me cry or feel weird or shamed or guilty or those kind of resonances. But it did resonate with me in the sense that it touched off a lot of thought about a lot of feelings that you have as a man in love, as a man in a frustrated relationship, as a man in a failing marriage, as a man in a sexless relationship or marriage, as a man who has rather large carnal appetites and wants to explore some other kind of out of the normative sexual areas. All of those things have described me in one way or another in about the last 10, 15 years. And like in my burgeoning middle age. Well, this is a character who's around 30 here, Bobby Grady, and he and I couldn't be more different. He's kind of an all-American dude. He was kind of a jock, and he has a very 80s movie. He has a very 80s haircut, kind of nice and feathered and layered, and then he's also got kind of this faux leather, or maybe it is leather, brown bomber jacket and the kind of cowboy boots, like you wear out to play pool or, just to, go cool, look cool, look kind of a little bit of country, a little rock and roll. And he's just very 80s looking dude. I worked with a lot of dudes like him in the 80s. In the same period, a little later. I mean, I was in school when this came out, and I remember when it came out, it was pretty fucking infamous because I knew Perkins, I knew Psycho, but this guy was kind of an unknown factor, and even Barry Sandler, who had approval over the casting and the final cut, and had approval not to bring in any other writers. It was in his contract because he'd gotten screwed up with Kansas City Bomber with Raquel Welch, which he pitched successfully to her while he was in college. That was kind of cool. I still haven't seen that. I really like to see it. I think my buddy D Strong is a fan. But Raquel is just about anything Raquel I'll watch. But yeah, John Laughlin as Bobby Grady, he's really an 80s kind of not want to say all American, middle American. He's not macho. That's the thing. He's got some of the trappings of, manliness. He's tall and he's in good shape. And, I described his wardrobe, his athletic bona fides or bona fides or bona fides, however you say that word. And, but he's also got traits that were used a lot in the mid 80s in this time of very heightened and excessive melodramatic films and TV shows and soap operas and comic books. I mean, everything was very pitched, very high emotions, and it was a gigantic influence on my formative brain, and it strongly influenced Flicker Street. It's in that the DNA of that is wound all through it. Though I've tried to keep a little more up to date, and of course reflect how my life and life in the world has changed, and of course tropes within storytelling. But so he's very earnest. You know what I mean? He's very earnest, and he's very angst ridden, and it's very relatable. He wants intimacy with his wife. And it's not just sex. He has sex and love inextricably linked in his mind. Like a lot of people did back then. So some people still do. A lot of people have given up on that idea, but for better or worse or whatever. And we're talking 35 years on now, but 1984, it was still a strong thing, but there was also the pressure of the sexual revolution. So people wanted fulfillment. They were being told it's okay to have sex. It's okay to express yourself. It's okay to be gay. It's okay to be bisexual. It's okay to have multiple partners. Just don't hurt somebody. And of course, a lot of people did get hurt emotionally. A lot of people got hurt by STDs and AIDS. But, and Barry Sandler touches on all this in his interview, coming out of the 70s, growing up in the sexual revolution and as a gay man, and gradually coming out and seeing all this kind of happening, and also having the empathy to write stories like this about heterosexual people. And to me, that's a good writer. I mean, like you said, it's a human experience. It's a spectrum. The dynamics, sexual and emotional dynamics, unfold uh, in the same ways. Now, I do think once again things are a lot more complicated now across all of it: relationships, marriage, genders. All of it is kind of chaotic, uh, but back then, you were getting the idea that, and just after he'd done a movie, Making Love, where he kind of groundbreaking movie where he wrote, where he's basically saying, two gay men, this is love. This is just like between a man and a woman. This is a romance too. This can be seen positively and still have intimacy and sex being an expression of love. Like I said, sex as an expression of love has become, wow. I mean, it's a divisive, polarizing concept in our culture, just as everything is right now. Everything's divisive. And, but back then, people were learning, discovering, hopefully growing. Uh, I was one of them. Of course, when this movie came out, I was still a virgin. I had a lot of frustrated sexuality and a lot of weird beliefs about sexuality. Some of them were very puritanical. Some of them were kind of that I repressed, were kind of wild and kinky, and I was confused. I knew I was heterosexual, and then I think, well, gosh, what would it have been like to be gay in that era? To be gay in that period. Jesus, talk about confusion and trying to decide and trying to fit in. And, my heart goes out, to all my gay brothers and sisters and non-binaries. And, it was rough. It was rough. I didn't have any openly gay friends in 1984. That's what's interesting. But I did start a few years later. I went through kind of a small phase in between where I was a little bit homophobic, and I'm not proud of it. I really, yeah, I grew up in the Bible Belt. I had a mother who was born again in the 80s, and she was extremely homophobic. Not just phobic, she just hated gay people because hating people is just such an important part of being reborn, into Christ and his teachings. But in any case, this movie would have absolutely blew my mom's brains out. But at the same time, she did have a voyeuristic interest in it. She read all about it and talked about it. And it was reviewed on Siskel and Ebert, which we faithfully watched every week. Another thing that really influenced my interest in film. So our man Bobby Grady, his wife played by Ann Archer. He has two kids. Ann Archer is quite beautiful in this. Her hair's really nice. Her eyes are really pretty. And I've always thought she was a middling actress comedian. I think her acting in this is actually quite good, unless she's really like that in real life, in which I wouldn't know her. She's not a sympathetic character. Bearing in mind that the writer is gay, bearing in mind that you're basically saying this guy's going to throw away all these family values of having the wife, the submissive wife and the home and the responsibility and the two kids and the house to pay for and the car, and fall in love with this prostitute with a double life. It's like saying, well, how can you not, to some people, it's like saying, how can you not sympathize or take sides with Ann Archer's character, Amy, the wife, and but if you really watch it and as a person and maybe also as a writer, actor, creator, whatever, he sets it up. There's really no way you can take her side. She's full of a lot of hate, and a lot of hate that seems rooted so deep in her fear of and hatred of her own sexuality, and of course everyone else's, that How do you reconcile that? You can't reconcile that in a 2-hour movie, especially when she's not one of the three main characters, as Barry Sandler points out. He said he wrote and even they even shot a couple scenes that kind of tried to voice a little more of her point of view, why she's so messed up, and engender some sympathy toward her. But they cut it because essentially it slowed down the movie. It's not really her story. She's a catalyst. I don't want to say she's a plot device, but she's not a completely rounded character. But to be honest, I've known a lot of women like Amy, and I lived with one for 3 years. Well, she wasn't like that exactly at first, but Amy probably wasn't either. And it was to the point where enough's enough. If are we going to do this or not? Is there going to be intimacy in our relationship? And I had to say to myself, and risk people thinking I'm, putting too much emphasis on it, or I'm a pervert, or I'm a misogynist, or blah 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 blah. But sex is important to me. It's extremely important to me. And it is part of the vitality of my life force. To me, the same energy courses through me as an artist and a creator. Magic, all of this is the same energy. I've talked about this many times on this channel. And I've spent the last 30 years learning and honing this philosophy and seeing it confirmed over and over for me and expanded. And it's enriched my life. Because there's a spiritual element too. I mean, Tantra isn't just, hey, let's try some crazy positions. There's energy and exchange, and there's an exchange of emotions. And when you do it with a partner that you're safe with, see, this is what this Bobby Grady guy is looking for, and that's why I connect with a guy like that who seemingly is nothing like me now, or even in the '80s. So I was slightly more like him in the '80s, but not much. But because he is yearning for that, and that is something I used to yearn for a lot. That ultimate experience, like you love this person. Like he says to his wife, "You know what makes me come?" And she's like, "Don't talk about it." Ooh, cooties. She doesn't say cooties. He's like, when I come inside the woman I love, I know she loves me, and I know that I'm giving her as much pleasure as she's giving me. Man, I've even practically said these exact words to women I've been with before I saw this movie. And certainly after, no doubt, it probably, it was inculcated in my brain here. I don't know, for people who've never felt that way, it might be old fashioned and you don't need all that, and whatever. The cynics will speak, but that's okay. I can out cynic them. The thing is, he needs money. That's one of their many problems, of course. Sex is big one, money. Two marriage wreckers right there. And the kids love him, but the wife she's really mean. And, I'm trying to resist the urge to say she's just a bitch. But no, that is kind of true. I mean, her responses are almost staggering. They're almost surreal. But like I said, I've known people like this. And, when we see this type is not politically correct to depict in fiction anymore. Amy would be an empowered person with a reason, and for being this way, and she would call herself asexual and put herself on a spectrum of sexuality and say that asexuality is a form of sexuality. See, everything is totally changed. The continuum is different. And someone like Amy would probably be seen as the heroine of this movie, and Bobby would probably be seen as a scumbag, and China Blue, would be seen as, come on now, are you, what? a prostitute. You can't make the prostitute sympathetic. Well, yes, you can. She's a sex worker. Okay, we'll make her a little sympathetic, but we're still going to say she's demeaning herself. But the thing is, the character's real name is Joanna Crane. Crane, another link to Anthony Perkins. Marion Crane was this victim in Psycho. Joanna Crane is ashamed. We don't get deeply into why, but she does have a double life, and she's got a very kind of cool, fashionable, kind of medium length-ish, shortish haircut. Shortish here haircut goes over to one side. Very cool looking. She dresses incredible. Her wardrobe as Joanna Crane is this bizarre kind of combination of preppy and dandy and kind of sex neutral, like a big tie and vest, but very styled around her body, which she's a very slim woman. And I gotta say, I think she's way, way sexier as Joanna than she is as China Blue in this ridiculously tight dress that doesn't flatter her very skinny body. And the wig's funny. She's hilarious in this movie. Her comedic skills are unrivaled. The repartee and the timing with all the characters, especially her and Bobby, and her and Shane Perkins. There's just this great triangle of energy, and it's a joy to watch. And it, halfway, 2/3 through the movie, it does start to get heavy, and you see that Bobby's kind of in despair. He's been joking this off, and in the process of helping his employer, helping this client do like PI work on the side, which is basically spying on Joanna, because her employer thinks she's stealing fashion designs and selling them to a competitor. So he's following her at night, and he's pretty wily. He manages to film, and he's a sneaky dude. He can get in and out of everything. That's the days before CCTV. He would have been arrested, easily be arrested nowadays as a stalker. But he gets in there. He gets right into the action and eavesdrops on her activities and kind of goes through some of her personal stuff she has there in her little loft. She stays in every night as China Blue in that life, and it's kind of her like fantasy, her pleasure dome, like Kubla Khan, her Xanadu, and finally he confronts her, as a customer and as someone new to this, and they have a repartee, the comedy, the his self-deprecating humor, and her constant like on wisecracks, but also like protecting her true self from coming out. The cracks start to show in both of them, and when they have sex, they end up more than having sex. They make love, they experiment, they do a lot of stuff, and some of those scenes are humorous. And when you do the silhouette with the galloping rock music by Wakeman, but against her wall is all these laces, all this lace pattern in those shot through with those hot pink and blues. It's almost is Bava-esque at times, and some of those scenes, all through those scenes in that area, her district, are incredibly shot. The timing of the dialogue and the cutting and the lighting are just perfect. I used to see this movie. It's just there's some pretty photography. It's kind of cool. It's kind of candy colored. It's kind of outrageous, like Liquid Skies is kind of in very 80s. But it's a lot deeper than that. This is some really, really strong imagery, and I don't mean just imagery as in the mise-en-scène or the graphic elements, how graphic it is, but just all tableau. Sorry, I'm throwing all these French, film words at you. I'm not trying to be highfalutin, but the sex scenes themselves, I reacted to one later in the movie between her and a John, that's particularly violent and graphic. But the ones between her and Grady, the first one between her and Grady, when she's China Blue, it is magnificently. I mean, yeah, there's, like I said, there's this funny ones where you're seeing all the positions. The ones of them together up close and their whole bodies, the lighting is, it's really some of the most erotic scene, well done erotic slash softcore scenes that I personally have ever seen in a movie. Maybe I just haven't seen much. But this is Ken Russell, man. Come on, he's a legend. And it's they touched me. I don't want to say I got a hard on. I didn't, but they were arousing in this sense. I mean, they were like, wow, these are really kind of hot. I don't feel that way about a lot of love or sex scenes in movies. And it's like, and it's really, there's this electricity going on between these two characters, between these two actors, and of course with Ken Russell, built on the foundation of this very humanistic storyline, which I think I call it humanistic because it's a man yearning for contact, for intimacy, and he doesn't care if he's going to extremes. He doesn't bat an eye that she's a hooker, and all this crazy shit. It's just he's ready. He's ready to try something different. He's ready to go for it, to have that experience. And I gotta say, I've been in his position a couple of times just in the last few years, and so that kind of really hit home. I don't think I was as successful as he was. One time I was, but others, so but what do you know? You never know until you try. So the other part of this is Peter Shane. Now, this character, of course, is Anthony Perkins. It's over the top. It's typecast, but he is quite good. His dialogue is very dramatic and veers back and forth between the biblical quotes and very dramatic passages and sleazy, nasty, double, triple, quadruple entendres, or something more blunt than that often, and then back and forth with Kathleen Turner, and of course she's got a mouth that's extremely fast, filthy, and witty, and this is some really pithy dialogue. I mean, this is one of these movies that really should be, if it's not already, maybe it is. It probably has a huge cult following that I'm unaware of. I know it has a cult following, but I mean, this one should be quoted up there with like Heathers and The Princess Bride and other movies of that period. Though I think it's a stronger movie than either. But I love Heathers. Princess Bride, it's okay. To me, it's fine. I've just never been part of that cult. I don't know. I got membership in enough cults, man. And but I'm in the Crimes of Passion cult very, very firmly now. I want a promotion. And so Peter Shane, basically, he just babbles, like, I want to save you, girl. And he makes judgmental comments. Eventually, as Grady does Grady does by following her home and shadowing her, Shane also finds out that she's Joanna Crane. She has this other life. He insists that they're similar, that he's got this kind of double personality, and that he's got this kind of fear of intimacy. And, he can only express it through, very deviant sexual acts. Is it true or not? Who knows? But in her case, she wants to heal. Once her and Bobby get together, and once he finally has had it with his wife, he goes to her earnestly, like, "Hey, now I'm kind of free. I want to see you. I want to see you as Joanna. I want to get to know you," and it's just so romantic. And just great scenes, fantastic scenes for me. And to me, I just thrive on this kind of shit. And she's like, "I don't know, Bobby. You'll get sick of me, or your wife will need you and call you away, or you'll get messed up about my past, and for one, she still holds on to being a hooker, but has some degrading experiences, and life-changing. Just three of them. She has this rich couple that kidnaps her in a limousine, and fun at first, and then it's just disgusting because they just see her as filth because they're so wealthy and powerful. And then she has sex with this cop or faux cop. He looks like something that walked out of a Tom of Finland book or out of Fassbender's film Sorel. He's like that cop character, and he's got a long nightstick, and that's the whole thing, the S&M. It's all gay imagery, and she's kind of the master, and it seems as though she's fucking him. She's on top of him fucking him. I think he's inside her, but definitely pretty soon his nightstick is inside him, and she's jamming it further and further up his rectum, and it's getting more and more painful. And he's like super muscle bound, and his expression, it's like she's a surrogate, but he's definitely having a gay experience, a power experience that comes with that, and so when he orgasms, it's out of control, and his acting is good. I mean, he's quivering, it looks real, and she kind of tries to just warmly make a joke, kind of a joke, or was that, I don't know, not was that great, but something like that, after sex banter, and he spits on her, and it really fucks with her mind, and because she's nothing to him. I mean, and going into it, that should have been obvious, but it's interesting to see this played out, and of course, it has this crazy heavy metal guitar music all through this. Like Wakeman said, this was very appropriate for this kind of scene, having that hard music for the hard things that's going on. And so after that, seems kind of done with China Blue, and she's Joanna, and her and Bobby are they make love as themselves, and it turns out great. And then he has to go to some dinner with the kids, and his wife is suddenly trying to get him back, and she's so pathetic, so annoying. And he has a friend played by Bruce Davison who's also kind of an annoying misogynist, but Davison's good in it. Davison's always good. And but he ends up, but Joanna is insecure, and he's like telling her, come on, And the thing about Bobby is good, and about Joanna, is that they'll like yell and be like, "Come on, no, what are you talking about? Why are we doing this?" But they're open, and that's a key. To me, that's opening a door. It's a key to open a door to communicate. They don't take it personally, even when their egos are on the line and they're fragile and about to get shattered. They think, they're going to say it. They're like, "Come on, talk to me," or "No, this isn't going to work. I don't know." But at least they're communicating. He can't do that with his wife at all. He makes a little gesture, and she's nothing. Then he kind of comes out and says, "Okay, now let's be blunt. Tell me." And then she gets aggressive and mean, closes off, passive aggressive. It's extremely horrible. So him and Joanna, their spirited fear expression of each other's fears that are sort of like mini arguments, they're really progress. They're really healthy because they're expressive and they're honest, and they don't hold them against each other. Like his wife, who like sits and festers and for years over some imagined slight, or some unresolved feeling about her own body or something, that she's never dealt with. Joanna's got a lot more baggage to deal with. And of course, the wife, Amy, is very, very, we find out she's very, they don't want to say Christian, but she's very family value. She talks in this annoying voice. Some people still have them, and she quivers, Anyway, so this is, and this movie is really much of its time. This was kind of these were the issues that were on the table then, man. And I think I've already told you a little bit, maybe too much, and maybe not well, about my own life and where I was at then and where people were at around me. But this movie, art is a mirror, art's a reflection, and this is just a wild kind of funhouse mirror, twisted and but still a true image. And of course, things come to a climax with the Reverend, who finally tries to kill her, and Bobby comes to save her, and she doesn't really need saving, but she needs him afterwards. And the movie's bookended by these scenes of him at an encounter group, which Bruce Davison's dragged him to. And in the beginning, he says, "I don't have any problems," but then he inadvertently comes up with, blurts out with him and his wife, and in fact, she won't have sex with him. And in the end, he's like, "I'm not with my wife. This is why I'm here. I realize I've got problems. I realize that I'm afraid." And that was he says that the thing I was most afraid of during our whole marriage was admitting I was afraid. And he said, so I came to Joanna and I said, "Okay, I'm afraid." And she said, "It's okay to be afraid." And, people when they're like in the room are like, "Oh man." And he goes, looks right at the camera and he's like, "And then we fucked our brains out." I don't know, man. Perfect script. Beautiful fucking movie. I love you guys. I want you to see this. I want you to experience it. If it's not your cup of poison, all good. I'll be back with something else next time that might be more to your liking. Got lots and lots of news about the channel coming up, but I'm going to save it until it's more concrete.